Hello, welcome back to episode 5 of the podcast slash vlog. If I'm being really honest, I'm feeling quite proud that it's episode 5. Is that okay to say? That feels a little bit like, oh, you're proud, are you? But I am because I really, there was one point where I was like, oh my gosh, can you imagine if I just do one episode and make this big thing and then don't do another one? So I'm like, yay, episode 5. I think I'll feel this now every episode, some kind of victory for consistency. I went to a coffee shop this morning because the sun came out today and it was beautiful. And I was reading my book, my Brené Brown book, which I've mentioned I'm reading very slowly, but I'm reading. And there was a quote in it that I put in the good book of quotes, and it goes, vulnerability is the emotion we experience when we feel uncertain, at risk, and emotionally exposed. In these moments, we have two choices: to self-protect and armor up, or to recognize what we are feeling, acknowledge that the emotion is tough to navigate, and choose courage anyway. That's Dr. Brené Brown, cited in her book, Strong Ground, and it crosses pages 89 to 90 if you want to go and find it. This was the first quote that jumped out to me this morning because what I've also been thinking about this week is the show Heated Rivalry. Heated Rivalry has been out for a hot minute. It's been out for a while, a couple of weeks now. I think it came out at the beginning of the year or the end of last year. And every gay man that I know, every gay person that I know has watched it, watched clips of it, told me to watch it, praised it. Friends of mine who are gay and have come from a sporting world or a sporting background have said, my gosh, this show is great. And I'm currently on episode 3, I think, or 4. So I haven't finished it yet, so please no spoilers. And if I'm being honest, I've avoided watching it. 2 reasons. One, I'm one of those people, if you hype a series up to me and loads of people hype it up to me, I'm going to subconsciously avoid that series until the hype settles down a little bit, because I think subconsciously I feel pressure to really like it. And then I kind of psych myself out of liking it. And I just wanted to arrive at it when it was time. With that being said, I think part of me was a little bit afraid. I knew that it was about closeted hockey players. And if I'm being honest, I find films and shows that tell stories about closeted men, gay men, to be sometimes quite draining to watch, even if they're positive. Heartstopper as an example, so positive, so wistful and hopeful and romantic and idealistic and, wonderful. Can't say enough good things about Heartstopper. It took me a while to watch that for the same reasons, is that it was hyped up and it was a story about being closeted. And I'd read the book, so I knew that it was positive. But yeah, I guess I've been coming to terms with the fact that when it comes to being closeted and telling stories about being closeted, that there is always a degree of disconnect and pain that comes from watching that, because I've done it. You know what I mean? I've done it. And now I've never been a hockey player. And, my closeted experience was not necessarily having a secret relationship, certainly not a serious one. But there's just a certain capacity for it and a sort of bracing that I know I have to do. I know there's lots of gay bi and pan people who feel this, people who have been closeted actually in any sense, feel that, especially because it's often the way storytellers bring gayness into the conversation, or the gay experience into a conversation on television. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just noticing a pattern and telling the truth about what it feels like when somebody goes, hey, there's a new thing that's going to explore this pattern. It's a little bit like when there's a new Spider-Man movie. You're like, okay, cool, great. They're rebooting that series again. Great. I know the beats of that. Can I really watch another actor get bitten by a spider and become Spider-Man? Do you know what I mean? Again, no shade to Spider-Man. However, after subconsciously avoiding the series, I finally watched it on Thursday, 4 days ago. And I sat in my living room started watching episode 1. And the first thing I'll say is that it is aptly named. It was very heated. It also was for me, I found it so easy to follow and invest in. These characters made so much sense to me. And actually, so far in what I'm watching, the memories it's brought back from being closeted haven't been traumatizing or triggering. They've kind of given me a new perspective on what being closeted was. That it was really brave to even think about coming out, or to even think about embracing how you really feel as a human being, when you have been taught very directly in no uncertain terms that the way you feel is wrong. It's wrong. And for you to be like, this is the truth for me. It's really the truth. And I've tried everything to change it and I can't. What I liked about Heated Rivalry is that the episode was not about these two characters trying to change themselves. It was about finding a way to be themselves in a way that was as safe as possible. And that actually had me so invested and just made me really feel for both of these characters. What I like about the two main characters, and I'm trying not to spoil this for anybody who hasn't watched it yet, is that if I'm being honest, they kind of represent what I know the two sides of me were when I was closeted. There was a side of me that wanted to be a really good boy, quote unquote. I was aware of all of the stakes and all of the great things in my life and all of the things I didn't want to lose that I potentially could if it was taken wrong by the wrong people at the wrong time. And there was also the side of me that actually really wanted to escape all of that expectation, that wanted relief from a lot of the pressure that I had in my own life at the time and a lot of the change that was going on in my life at the time. And I guess I was seeing the vulnerability of both mindsets and the relief of what it felt like to actually finally touch the walls of this massive secret that you have treated as taboo for so long, and how much freedom it actually gives you, even just to experience it, even in a small way for the first time. There's a tenderness and a sensuality that runs through the show that's not just sexual, that is really refreshing, but also feels quite real and relatable. And I guess now I'm on like episode 4, and episode 4 is, if it is episode 4, is kind of a standalone episode. It tells the story of two other characters that are not the main two. And still explores closetedness, but also explores the yearning for just normalcy. The yearning for just romantic love that isn't heightened and intense, but actually is just, I want to come home and you be here. I want to cook you a meal and go out for food with you, or go and listen to some music. I want to be able to celebrate my birthday and you be there. And again, instead of this bringing up some deep pain, it actually made me feel so grateful, because I'm not, thankfully, living in that place anymore. But what I was also experiencing, if I'm being honest, was a little bit of, is the word for this? I don't know if it's a mourning. I don't know if it's a bit sad, but like, there's a scene where, a classic rom-com style scene where this character tries to leave in the morning after after these two guys have slept together. One of them tries to leave and the guy says, please don't leave, please stay. And that happens in so many rom-coms. And I have watched straight pairing after straight pairing have that moment on screen. And I've recognized that's a romantic moment. But if I'm being honest, when I saw these two guys have this moment, I realized that I've never actually felt what people must feel when they're attracted to, when they're heterosexual, watching a heterosexual scene like that play out. I, as somebody who's not heterosexual, is watching that scene going, oh, that's lovely, isn't it? And oh, that's sweet. And we're being shown that they're really tender and they love each other. But when I'm actually watching my sexuality have that moment, I'm not thinking, yeah, that's really nice and lovely. I'm feeling it. Does that make sense? I'm feeling it. I'm like, that's so nice, but in a different way. How do I explain it? I'm trying. I'm here and I'm trying. I'm in the vulnerable place of trying to explain something emotional that didn't have words. Anyway, and so I felt a bit of sadness because suddenly I wanted loads of rom-coms that were just gay relationships. I want loads of them. I want them all. I want them all. I want the gay version of Sleepless in Seattle or whatever. I want the gay version of, Meet the Parents or, I want it because I want to feel what straight people get to feel. I feel ridiculous for saying it. I don't feel ridiculous. That's a lie. I feel I feel vulnerable even saying it. I'm like, right now, I'm so like, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but it's the truth. I want it. I want it. Like, and I don't have control over it. And it's just, but I think I was just feeling the loss of it and a little bit, not jealousy, because it wasn't a coveting. It wasn't like, I want it instead of you or I want it over you. It was more like, oh, I'm realizing that that's a feeling that I'm only getting because I'm seeing this moment play out like this. And that, this moment's not going to be made for me or for people like me to the same scale. And yeah, it made me a little sad, but it also made me appreciate it so much and be moved by it. And I'm having that feeling watching this series of sadness a little bit that it's, it will be over. I'll get to the end of this series and it'll be over. Maybe there'll be a series 2. Who knows? I don't know how it ends. So again, please don't ruin it. But yeah, I didn't know I was going to talk about all that, but I have. So here we are. But in talking about it now, the vulnerability, the storyline, the superhero analogy from the Spider-Man example is making me think about a song that I'm working on for the album, which is currently called Superman. I wanted to write a song that captured my first experience going into a gay bar under the kind of cloak of an anonymity, knowing that I could kind of explore my true identity and empowering it feels. You feel like a superhero. You're kind of in disguise. You feel charged up with like some kind of superpower, some kind of invincibility. But the thing that I think about is, and this is such a weird thing to think about maybe, but this is where my brain has just gone. So here's the truth. In the final scenes of Kill Bill, when the bride character finally meets Bill, Bill tells a story about Superman and says that Superman, when he's being Superman, is actually being himself. He's a Kryptonian, he's an alien who can fly, who has heat vision, X-ray vision, can leap tall buildings. These are who he is. He actually can do all of these things. These aren't special powers he got from being bitten by a radioactive spider that changed him. They're not a utility belt of tools and things that Batman puts on. Superman is these things, and his disguise, his cloak, is Clark Kent. When Superman is Clark Kent, he's in costume as a human being. He's pretending to be a regular Joe, a regular person. And when he's Superman, he's actually being who he really is. No apology. And actually who he really is all of these things that humans aren't. And so there was this analogy when I was in the studio where I was like, that is what going into that environment feels like. You feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have to hide. I don't have to pretend that I can't lift this house up. And I don't have to pretend that I can't, melt that thing with my eyes. Or fly. You know what I mean? I don't have to pretend that I'm not these things. I can just be all these things. And more than that, I can be celebrated and like be comfortable and be around other Kryptonians, And so I called the song Superman, and it's like flirty. It's playing with that Falausha thing I was talking about last week, that sort of flirty, playful love. And it's trying to capture the truth of the excitement and the sort of superhero action movie, high stakes feeling of approaching a guy for the first time, or just standing there and being seen in that space is huge. I'm smiling just thinking about it. when I used to think back to those memories before watching Heated Rivalry and before reading this book, I used to think of it as this sort of tentative and fearful, shameful, secretive thing. But now I'm realizing that it was the definition of bravery. It was fearful, yes. I mean, there was a lot of fear, but it was walking into this situation, that experience, remaining consistent to what I wanted, to what I believed, what was true, and what I felt like was important to do, even though I was so afraid and excited and unsure and hopeful that it would be a positive thing in the long run. I think so much of that has formed a core part of how I do things, how I step into new stuff. It's probably forming part of how I'm doing this work. And it's bringing me back to the other quote that I read today from Dr. Brené Brown. If you think you're being brave and you're feeling no uncertainty, risk, or emotional exposure, you're probably not being that brave. That's Dr. Brené Brown, quoted in Strong Ground on page 91, literally the following page after the opening quote. She was cooking that day in the writing room, let me tell you. If you think you're being brave, but you're not feeling any vulnerability, you're probably not being that brave. But what that means is in everything that you're doing that is brave, you're going to have fear with you. That's not a sign that you're doing it wrong, you're being brave in the wrong way. It's actually the proof that you are being brave, because if you're feeling it, but you're not using that as a reason to give up entirely, if you show up and do just a little bit of it, if you just turn up at the club, you don't have to speak to a single guy. If you can just stand in the club and be seen in the club, even though your fear is doing a business, that is bravery. And hey, if your instinct then tells you to go chat to somebody, you choosing to go and do it, even braver. Then it's just stepping up and stepping up. And the fear will still be there. It's a good thing for me to remember. And maybe a good thing for all of us. It's also worth saying that I'm sort of in the final process over this next week in putting together the intended plan for this year in terms of the layouts of shows and how it builds up to the album release and stuff. And I think what I'm having to remember is that although I might lay out this plan, I'm probably still going to feel some fears and some uncertainties. And I'm also probably going to get called at some point to make changes. And I need to stay brave, and I need to stay present, and I need to stay true to my instinct throughout, and recognize that my instincts and my heart and my truths are not these things to be hidden away or avoided or ignored for some logical plan, but they're actually the superpower that makes me who I am and allows me to go into that situation and be my own hero, to actually achieve the thing and achieve what matters the most. So yeah, wish me luck. I'm wishing you luck as well. I want to say thank you to everybody who has given me comments on these episodes. Comments on this would be greatly appreciated. Any lessons or memories of vulnerability and stepping into your power that you're willing to share, oh my gosh, please do. Even just sitting with me in this moment, it's nice. So thank you. As usual, if you want to join the conversation or share anything, just head to my Instagram and join the Evergreens channel. Big love, and I'll see you next time.